And
So
that's a perfect point for me to ask this question because I've been thinking a lot about how your patent impacts the space
mhm.
and people's response to it. And their first reaction is patents don't belong in a decentralized world. But they need to realize that if your patent received the recognition that it should get, it would ensure decentralization on a
Mhm.
fair and equal playing field. So it
Yeah.
just it puzzles me, and at the same time, I haven't been in the space that long. It's only been 3 years. So there's still aspects that I don't know, but I can see that right now. And it's just like it's come on, guys. You guys got to look at it from a different lens. And I think the FTX situation is going to go a long way in changing people's perception. So that kind of leads to the one question I did write down. With the utility era coming upon us, how do you feel? How influential do you think your patent is going to be?
I mean, I think the patent is a foundational technology. So,
Mhm.
people say the patent doesn't belong in the decentralized world. The patent is the decentralized world. It's that's like,
I
you
had to clap away from the
know,
mic,
I mean, that's what was patented. The decentralized, or it's actually distributed, which is the layer above decentralization. So it's full
Hmm.
distribution. And that's what was patented, to be able to do a low trust or zero trust transfer peer to peer without an authoritative third party, conditional upon a data source. So basically, just to explain to everybody, if I send one F to a wait, that's not going to trigger any of the patent claims. If I
Hmm.
send one F to a conditioned upon the time of day, his disposition, you know, his girlfriend's attitude, whatever,
Right.
right? That actually triggers a patent.
Mm.
Okay. And there are various ways and methods and devices and systems to do it without having to rely on anybody else, eliminating
Mm.
counterparty and credit risk. That's what DeFi is.
Right.
FTX should teach everybody a lesson, but so should have Celsius and Voyager and BlockFi and Mt. Gox and Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns. These lessons get taught often, they rarely get learned.
Mm.
Okay, um, so those people who say, patents don't belong, A, they don't really understand patent law, and B, they don't understand business history and global macroeconomics.
Hmm.
Look at crypto is literally purely an IP driven industry, purely. It's nothing but intellectual property, thoughts about code, systems, cryptography. It's all IP. You take the IP out, there is no crypto. And for people who are anti patents, I just explained, think about the most prolific, deepest, wealthiest, and most powerful markets in the world. They're all rife with IP. Smartphone industry. Use an iPhone or Android.
Android.
Okay, so Android has, I'm using here, this is a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold, right?
I want that phone so bad.
It's about 1,400 patents,
Mm.
right, in this phone. 1,400. Do you think Samsung has a problem selling phones? Has the patents that Samsung owns, or the iPhone has a little over 1,200 patents. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, Samsung and Apple have a lot of patents, very large patent profile. I think Samsung has like 50,000 plus in terms of patents. Did Samsung bring down the cell phone industry?
Not at all.
Did Apple collapse or destroy the cell phone industry?
Not
As
at
a matter
all.
of fact, they're number one and number three. Apple might be number two now. Number two was Huawei, but due to geopolitical concerns, they were pushed to the side.
Yeah.
But basically, the companies, industries with the most patents are the biggest and the fastest growing, and the technology is the most prolific, which is the exact antithesis of what a lot of these cypherpunk guys are saying. They're putting their opinions in the argument and they're ignoring historical fact. Okay,
Hmm.
which is cool unless you're really trying to make money. And then if you make money and you run on your opinion and ignore historical fact, you lose money. You
Yeah.
lose the race, you lose everything else. Now, a lot of the guys who say this because they have, ulterior motives and agendas. So a lot of them that work for the larger, more powerful entities are pirates. You know,
Hmm.
patents are bad if we don't own them. Patents are good if we own or control them, like COPA.
Yeah.
Okay. Patents are bad for the industry if you're not part of the alliance. If you're part of the alliance, patents are good. You pull it and let everybody do what you want. Basically, they say they want to protect everybody, but their definition of protection is doing what they say. If
Yeah.
you're an entrepreneur or an inventor and you create something and you want to be compensated for it or you want to use it yourself, that's a bad thing. That is anti-capitalism, antithetical to the Constitution, literally, because the concepts of patents are in the Constitution, and I could go on ad nauseam.
Yeah.
So, um, and like I said, you can use the cell phone industry, you can use Wi-Fi 6, patented, Bluetooth is patented. Without patents, this phone would not work. You never better do a Zoom call. You
Yeah.
couldn't use your camera. You can't use these foldable screens, you know, all down the list.
Microphone, headphones. Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
patented.
yeah.
And it's a perfect analogy because I often tell my viewers that we should look at cryptos as products.
Mm-hmm.
What are they producing that's going to provide real world value?
Right,
And we wouldn't see brands like Google, Microsoft, Xbox, Sony if they didn't have their technology and their services patented beforehand.
right.
So it's just things that because the industry is so young,
Mm-hmm.
that's the real reason why the reaction is so. I
Yeah,
remember we talked a few months back and you said once professionalism gets into crypto, once professional businessmen get into crypto, then things will change. And
right.
I think, yeah, we're a lot closer to that point.
Yeah. If we were to use the patented products from our patents, FTX wouldn't be an issue. Celsius and everything else. I'm a strong believer, right? Self-sovereign, finance. The whole purpose of the crypto is for you to have control and for you to avoid counterparty and credit risk. All these collapses were purely counterparty credit risk driven and transparency driven. All of them.
Mm,
Some of it was just ill decisions, ill thought out decisions. So if you're going to give your assets to somebody as a custodian or just give them possession, you better have full transparency in what they do. And you don't have to have full transparency in everybody, but if you don't give it to them. It's just that simple,
all right.
and it's safer to hold it on chain. You
Mm,
still have, certain security risk and execution risk, but you don't have is counterparty risk and credit risk. Okay. The blockchain doesn't go and hypothecate your assets. It
right.
simply doesn't. So I can tell you now, I would be happy. I would be happy to help someone design a decentralized, distributed mechanism to take the place of centralized mechanisms.
Mm,
There's right now, and smart CEO, and like I said, age is really more than a number. I think CZ is a very mature operator, a very advanced operator. You know, almost the antithesis of Sam Bankman-Fried. And I'm not going to do what the media does and just jump on him and beat him up. I have no idea what happened, but I do know that I know a lot more than many others. And if I don't know what happened, they definitely don't know.
mm-hmm.
Okay. So whatever the truth is, you're not going to find it through the media. But um, CZ knows that Coinbase and Binance and FTX and Warbies and their current manifestation are not going to exist. They're either going to be heavily regulated and even more centralized.
Mm-hmm.
That's the base case scenario. The fringe scenario is decentralization or distribution will be a stronger force and will be used more. I doubt so because a lot of what people call the powers that be, the banking and regulatory infrastructure that supports the banks or that works for the banks, um, that's going to eliminate their ability to extract rents.
Right.
Strong centralization and synthetic barriers are how they make extra normal profits. Extra normal being more than normal.
From
And they're
centralization, right?
right.
Okay.
Centralization and the implementation of artificial barriers. Right now, I could send BTC to you without much of an issue. So, in order to make a profit, a mechanism out of that, I need to put something between you and I So when I send a BCTC, I got to pay somebody.
That
So
would be a cash app.
right,
Mm-hmm.
or etc. I believe Cash App and definitely infringes on their patent.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's probably one of the most efficient transfer mechanisms in crypto that a lot of people don't know about.
yeah,
And I remember when Taproot got activated last November, that's when Cash App started sending notifications about being able to use the Lightning Network. And I was
yeah,
like, well, wait a minute, where did that come from?
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people have their feelings about the Lightning Network as well, that sometimes somehow falls in line with the same feelings that they have about patents. It's
Mhm.
like if it's a centralized entity, they don't want it anywhere near crypto.
Right.
But centralization brings organization, and organization is crucial to development of any business. And
Right.
if we want these assets to achieve these price valuations that will make us all wealthy, they're going to need to be organized. I'm not going to say they need centralization. I would rather use the word organization, and what comes from that will come from that. Because you can have organized decentralization.
Right. What
Yeah.
is a thought experiment? You say they don't want it anywhere near crypto. Give me an example of a decentralized entity or organization
Digibyte.
or business. Digibyte.
Yep.
Okay. Who controls Digibyte's GitHub access?
It's all public. Develop from my observations of the Digibyte community, that's probably one of the few examples where decentralization actually works, where everybody is agreeing on movements and activities at the same time. You'll often have people contributing to their GitHub that, you know, they're just like me and you, just regular everyday people, but they'll somebody put up a comic book a few months back. They're uploading audio files, building out NFTs, and this is all coming from the public. So,
Right. But let me just jump in. Who
mhm.
controls the admin access to their GitHub account? Is
Well,
it everybody or the public?
that specifically, I wouldn't know.
Okay, I can
Yeah.
tell you who it's not, and it's
Mhm.
not everybody. Okay, everybody
Mhm.
doesn't have mass admin access to the GitHub. If
Okay.
they did, then Digibyte will probably be a mess, hacked and disorganized, etc. So
Mhm.
it probably
Makes
sits in the
sense.
hands of two. It has to be more than one. It doesn't have to be,
Well,
but
I would say Jared Tate. That's the founder creator. So I'm assuming
right.
he would definitely have one.
But for safety reasons, you have at least three.
Okay.
Okay, and they should be geographically dispersed. But if it's three, four, five, six, if it's 20, it is highly centralized. Period.
Hmm.
Okay. And, you know, of course, there's a very strong logical reason for that, but that also destroys the pure decentralization argument. Nothing is decentralized, nothing is centralized. Everything exists on a continuum or a spectrum between the two. Okay. And that's one example. A lot of people push back, but it's a very simple example. Anything that's fully decentralized will have um, uh, admin level GitHub access available to everybody else. That's
Hmm.
decentralization. Okay. And you see how that would end up within hours, probably minutes, but let's say hours. You'd have a
Right.
mess.
So would
Okay.
that be different from, let's say, how Hedera has their technology open source, where people can go to them and then get what they need to build on Hedera?
Well, I think being open source doesn't necessarily have anything to do with decentralization. Open
Hmm.
source is a license for code. Okay.
Okay.
And I think we went through before, you cannot be anti-patent or anti-IP production, but pro-open source at the same time. If you are, it shows you don't understand IP law. In order to open
Okay.
source something and have it remain open source, you have to have control over the actual IP. So
Hmm.
suppose you wrote this killer code, Bitcoin, right? You came up with the Bitcoin white paper and you wrote the initial code and he said, I want the whole world to have this. And you just put it out. Okay. And then I say, that's a very good idea. I take it, I make 2 or 3 changes to it. And then I, I try and copyright the parts that I feel that I made. Could have been everything, whether that's true or not.
Mm-hmm.
I patent it if it's patentable, and I control it now. And now it's
Mm-hmm.
closed sourced, despite your intentions and your wishes. And if you come and challenge me, there's a very strong chance that I'd win that challenge because I took control of the IP. Now, the way MIT and BSU, whatever the licensing schemes are, the way
Mm-hmm.
they work is they take copyright control. They exercise their copyrights and they control the IP and take ownership of it. And then with that ownership, they can say, I want this to be open in perpetuity. Some of them are very aggressive in saying, if you make a change to this, you have to make that change available to the community. And the reason they're
Mm.
able to do that is because they exercise their intellectual property rights and they took control of their intellectual property. What you do with that control is up to you. If you don't have the control, you cannot make something, or you can make it open source. You cannot enforce the open source in perpetuity,
Mm.
or maybe at all. So
Okay, so
anybody who's staunchly in favor of open source software or open source anything is also staunchly in favor of IP rights and protection.
mm.
And that's going to blow a lot of the guys' viewers' minds. What? And that's why
Yeah,
you
I was
don't
gonna
opine on
say,
something you don't know. Okay.
right. I was gonna say
Yeah.
Hedera holders. Lehman Baird, he got that patent a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pay attention to his trajectory, it can give you an idea of why this work is important. And we really need to be supporting Reggie on this mission a little bit more. So wow, yeah. I'm fascinated every time we get a chance to talk, man.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
let me see if I got anything else. We kind of touched on FTX. So as far as what's going on with Coinbase, what can we look forward to in the coming months or weeks?
Well, today is the 5th. I think their deadline to reply to our opposition motion is due, I believe. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Curious to hear what they say. Our opposition motion, I believe, was very, very, very strong. If you read the complaint, they complained about the complaint because the claims table, which is a part that shows the proof and the evidence that they infringed, was 117 pages. Not the whole complaint, just the part that says you infringe and this is why. And that's not all of it at all. And then they filed a motion to dismiss. My belief it was sort of weak, but again, I'm not smart like those guys are. I'm not. Okay, if I was, then I'd be on the front page of CoinDesk right now. Wink, wink, right?
I know,
So
right?
the uh, our opposition motion makes it very clear how strong our legal position is, our factual position, and how talented our legal advisors are. They're very good. Okay. And also shows how strong the patent position is. I don't want to get cocky, of course. We'll see what their reply to the opposition motion says. And from there, if the judge agrees with us, the judge will dismiss the opposition motion, or the judge can grant the opposition motion,
Okay.
which we can, potentially appeal, or the judge would say make some different, some changes, some clarifications, etc., which we'll do. If things go in our favor, and opposition motions are hard to get granted, by the way, they are very hard. So the plaintiff has to make an egregious error or just bring an absolute nonsense lawsuit.
Okay. And that opposition motion would come from Coinbase.
No, the opposition motion came from us. So they had a motion to
Okay.
dismiss. We are opposing that motion to dismiss. They get
Okay.
to reply to our opposition. But if they lose the opposition, if they lose the motion to dismiss, then the next step is discovery, where
Okay.
we get to exchange documents and I get to go through Coinbase and the fintech and financial expert who predicted the collapse of Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers and General Growth Properties and the commercial and residential real estate industries and the sovereign debt crisis and the global macro malaise over there and the collapse of research in motion, the boom
Mm-hmm.
of the Android of Google through Android, the overpricing of etc. I know my stuff. My team knows our stuff. We get to go through Coinbase, and I don't think there's any entity who will be better suited to pull stuff out and figure out what's going on than us.
Mm.
I don't think Coinbase would want that. And again, I have nothing against Coinbase. I'm actually very proud of what Brian Armstrong built and his team. I am.
Yeah, I would agree. I made a video shortly before they went public where I said their appearance into this market was significant for our industry.
Right.
But I took that video down, and it's full disclosure. I took it down once you guys got involved with Coinbase and more information came out about the inner workings and who's Brian, so forth and so on. But I still agree too that Coinbase is significant to the history and the development of this industry, and it will go down as that. But I also feel like we're going to need a narrative for 2023 to go along with Tether and what the Fed has to do. And do you see them do you think if the case does go to discovery, that's when the media will start to pick more up on it?
It's hard to tell because the media, a lot of people don't understand what the media is. People look at the media like I meet people, they may be interested in, what I do and say, well, I'm going to research you. And what they consider research is going to Google, doing searches, looking at articles, and reading what the article says. Not all reporters or editors make the efforts that you do to do deep dives. And you do a good job. And I'm giving you credit up front. He does a good job, both objectively and from a subjective perspective. Even you've made some mistakes and some credible mistakes, but that happens. Okay. And that happens when you do a lot of things.
Yeah.
If you can make these mistakes, imagine guys who don't do the deep dive, don't have the overarching knowledge or the lack of an ulterior motive or agenda. Imagine what they do. Okay. And so the media is not a place to get actual information, data, or knowledge. You get opinions and you get agendas sprinkled with some information, usually to support those opinions or agendas. And I'm not knocking the media industry. I'm being factual. It is what it is.
True.
The reason why I'm not in a lot of crypto news articles, and they should, this patent and the fact that we are exercising our patent rights is probably the biggest news in the industry, much bigger than FTX. I can tell you that much. I don't believe there's an operation that's not covered. I mean, there's a platform that is not covered by the patent. Well, I can't say that. I haven't found one. And I have a team, and we haven't found one yet. So that's significant. That wasn't in CoinDesk at all until Reuters ran an article. Right. And then CoinDesk decided to pick it up. And I've been pinging CoinDesk for about a year and a half. They decided to ignore it. Why? Well, CoinDesk is owned by one of the biggest investors in the space. And knowledge of this would put pressure on their investments. Okay. But now you see CoinDesk has an ulterior motive not to report on this. And when they did report on it, 35% of reporting was about SEC allegations from 2019.
Went straight to it.
Which, never went to court, was never adjudicated, and never admitted or denied it. And now, in retrospect, Ripple has the same issue, and almost everybody who threatens the status quo. Okay, so I don't believe you would get the same effect by doing research on, through CoinDesk, and even Reuters didn't necessarily do as nearly a deep dive as you did. And I recommend everybody take a look at Wade's article.
I'll have it float up here somewhere.
Yeah, very good job. Now, I'm not knocking CoinDesk. I'm not knocking anybody else. Cointelegraph, who's owned by the same entities as CoinDesk, surprised me. And kudos and props goes out to Cointelegraph. You guys did a pretty objective job. and goes
Yeah,
to
I think
show
I
you.
read that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. It goes to show you what I think, because I was shocked that they did an objective job. And you should not be shocked that you get an objective news article. But the guys did. So kudos goes out to them.
Right.
So as we move forward, um, I think it would be pertinent to realize that uh, there's going to be a big change. Most of the potential ramifications are not going to come from what you call the crypto industry. It's going to come from sovereigns in the banking industry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's where the everything is going, and most people don't realize that. And my job is to have a big macro view and to be able to see 1 2 3 steps in front of me. Okay, because I need to for survival. So that, in a nutshell, is look towards the banking industry, the powers that be, and
Mm-hmm.
the sovereigns, because that's where everything is going, and it's going very, very, very fast.
Very
Okay, and if
true.
you want to know what's going on, just stay tuned. As big changes are coming into the industry. I can't
No
predict the
doubt.
future, but big changes coming in the industry, and the Binances and the Coinbases, etc. They're going to, in order to survive, I think they're going to have to either align themselves with a major financial institution, a regulated one, which I think is probably Coinbase's future,
Mm-hmm.
or adopt decentralization in a big way, and that's going to be an issue because I think regulation is going to block much of that. And that's how, as I see it going forward. Coinbase, as it stands now, has an unsustainable business model. They can't go forward.
Mm.
Coinbase is burning over $2 billion a quarter out of their cash file. They had $7 billion quarter before last. They have $5 billion as of last quarter. I expect them to burn at least $2 billion out of that. They've cut a lot of their costs. Okay, so the burn
Mm.
is slower. But when you cut costs, you also cut your growth potential. But also in cutting costs, FTX happened, and centralized exchanges have lost a lot of capital. They've had about a 40% decrease in cash on hand from customers.
Mm-hmm.
Many other industries, that would be called a run on the bank. So 40% of the customers took cash out last quarter, and they burned through 30% of their own cash. And that's before FTX, which is the biggest event
And
in history.
nobody's reporting on that.
Yeah, oh, just look at the balance sheet. As a matter of fact, the reason why I thought of it is Brian Armstrong posted the balance sheet saying, we're a public company. There should be no reason to doubt our financial position. We're fully transparent. And I'm like, first of all, Brian, who I don't know personally, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the fact you're coming up and dispelling FUD directly on Twitter. It takes balls for a CEO to do that, and there's risk.
Yeah.
Okay. But I also don't feel they're fully transparent. They're doing audits, they're posting their assets. Binance and Warby and everybody else are doing proof of reserves.
Yeah.
From a financial perspective, that's irrelevant, right? Showing a proof of reserve doesn't show you solvency. That's
Right.
like, saying, here's my right hand. I didn't steal anything. Dude, what's in your left hand? Why is your left hand behind your back? Here's my right hand. And then if you
Yeah.
ask for the left hand, it's like, look. So, can I see both your hands at the same time? They're like, nah, I can't do
Nah,
that.
I can't do that for you.
Yeah. So the proof of reserves thing is, again, that's a technological solution to a financial question that hasn't been asked yet. So
Yeah. It looking back to me, it all looks like marketing.
yeah.
It was a marketing ploy because
Damage
what you
control.
yeah,
PR. I give that more PR than market, but
PR.
I,
Yep,
I
that's
do
the
agree with you in
perfect.
principle. Yeah.
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 That's
Yeah.
the perfect word for it because what you saw was essentially the glorification of stablecoins. We
Yeah.
we now know that all of these exchanges hold a heap ton of tether.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got from the proof of exchange thing was that
Right.
everybody's got a lot of tether.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go after tether now, well, you know exactly where it's at. And
Yeah.
you can pinpoint, and this is just theoretical, of course, you can pinpoint which exchange would be easier to target.
Right.
So,
And there's a house of cards forming. There's a lot to talk about. First, let me finish from Coinbase. So
yeah.
Brian posts parts of his assets on his balance sheet saying we're strong. These are our reserves, Bitcoin, etc., without posting the liabilities. Again, that's saying I stole nothing. Here's my right hand. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to pose liabilities in conjunction with assets to begin to ascertain solvency. Okay. He hasn't done that. And when you do look at his balance sheet, you compare quarter on quarter, it looks very, very bad.
Mm-hmm.
Coinbase has an unsustainable business model because they don't make money consistently. They make money and a lot of money when Bitcoin goes up in price. When Bitcoin goes down in price, they lose a lot of money. That's not a business. That is speculation on Bitcoin. And at the
Right.
same time, they're burning through invested capital, speculating on Bitcoin. If you're going to do that, you could do that without going through the equity risk of a company, burning through company capital. You just buy Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's an oversimplification. You have Ethereum, et cetera, but there's a high correlation. And if you look at every reporting period, right, do the average price of Bitcoin during that report, the period before that reporting period, and you'll see Bitcoin goes up, Coinbase profits go up. Bitcoin goes down, Coinbase profits go down.
Yeah.
Okay. So do their margins, so do their trading volumes, etc. Now they're trying to diversify and get out of that. But as they diversify, they're spreading um, their revenue base out into other areas. But those
Mm-hmm.
areas are also highly correlated to Bitcoin price. Okay. Now they've created infrastructure that's valuable. So BlackRock, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, they would love to be able to get Coinbase because much easier than building it from scratch if they could build it from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But Coinbase as itself is unsustainable. And we haven't even broached the fact that I believe over 90% of revenues are dependent on our patented technology. What a patent does, it doesn't give you the right to do something. A patent works the opposite. It gives you the right to exclude others from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's suppose that Veridao Capital decides to open up an exchange and does so and says, well, we no longer want Coinbase to operate in this area. So instead of licensing the technology, we're not going to license it. We're going to exclude them. Now, Coinbase and the $3.5 billion they raised during the IPO are pretty much out of business,
Yeah.
right? Does that sound like a risk to you?
Pretty big one.
Yeah. Should that be disclosed to shareholders?
I would want to know that.
And if nobody told you that, do you think it would be transparent?
No, not
You
by
bet.
any definition I know.
Send a tweet over to Brian and tell him that you disagree with this transparency statement. Then, and the thing is,
Man.
they can have a legal opinion or perspective. We don't think your patents are valid. We don't think it's material. No problem,
Mm.
and I can understand that. Okay, that's what makes a market. I think so. They don't, but with this information that there's a lawsuit from a patent from 2014, and that patent holder is asserting that 90% plus or minus of their revenues are infringing on that patent. Do you think investors, stakeholders, partners, equity shareholders, bond buyers, do you think they would consider that material information?
All right.
Okay. And withholding that, you're taking risk and you're definitely not being transparent. And that's my issue with Coinbase there. But I'm not a
Mm.
Coinbase investor. If I was a Coinbase investor, Coinbase would be in a class action lawsuit right now because I felt they were doing the wrong thing. But I'm not a Coinbase investor. I have nothing against Coinbase. But again, do not throw rocks from inside of a glass house. It's dangerous. So, you talk trash about FTX not being
Yeah.
transparent, you know.
Hey, right. You never know what'll happen the next day in
Yes.
crypto.
Yeah.
You mentioned the word exchange, and it just had me thinking about could some or well, I'll just say, could you at one point in the future build an exchange since you essentially have the patent for how an exchange works?
I could, but I'm not a big fan of the uh how do I put it? Trying to put it.
All the other things that come with it?
Yeah,
Okay.
the regulatory environment in the United States is ridiculous. It's awful. It's disgusting.
Right.
Very favoritism is obviously designed to put a lot of the entrepreneurial pursuits to the wayside and
Mhm.
to benefit the money in the banks, etc. And it's going to happen, which is why in the beginning or earlier, I was saying that's going to be the path most likely. Rampant centralization protected by regulation.
Right.
I believe you should go after all fraud. That, of course, is not to be said. I'm a big believer in um, solvency ratios and liquidity minimums if you hold investor capital, okay, or client custody fund, because you want the clients to be able to get their money back. That's all cool. That's not what's being done in the crypto industry. They're
Yeah.
going after, you know, brothers from Brooklyn who invent stuff. They're going after Instagram models. And meanwhile, FTX is taking the floor off everybody and Celsius and everybody else.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they might have been investing in those companies, but they didn't put a hard stop on them like they did me. The chairman of a regulatory agency went after a cute, now don't get me wrong, a cute Instagram model. Okay.
Oh
Find her
man.
and did
Right.
a video on it and put the video out on his website through social media, bragging about how he took down his Instagram model. As FTX, who he's seen and visited and interacted with, literally gutted the industry. It's counterparty risk contagion throughout.
Mm.
So maybe a little less Instagram model attacking, maybe a little more of the systemic risk. But again, hey, listen, I'm just a dad. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not as
Right.
smart as all
We
these other
don't know
regulators
nothing.
and lawyers and bankers. I don't know. So, um, so let's
Crypto,
see. What
man.
what did I not cover? Oh, and the stable coin and the risk with stable coins. Stable coins is again the mechanism in which stablecoins are put together. The revenue model has a perverse incentive, and so
Mm.
it's put together wrong. So for all of them, the algorithmic stablecoins have yet to work that I've seen. Um, and the ones that are working better have heavy centralization components, which defeat the purpose of using an algorithmic stablecoin. The only reason
Right.
you want to take the risk of using an algorithmic stablecoin is to keep it completely on chain. But if you rely on things off chain that are stabilized with counterparty and credit risk, then what's the use of going algorithmic where you might as well just do it as a back coin to begin with, since some of it's going to be back anyway. But stable coins are return free risk,
Hmm.
you know, and should be no incentive to take return free risk. Risk is the price of return. You pay risk to get a return. Optimally, you want to pay 1 unit of risk to get 2 units of return. That doesn't mean you never lose money. That means if you did this continuously, right? Um, one times out of every 33% of the times you might take a loss. The other 66%, you have a gain and you'd make money over time. As long as
Mm.
those losses and gains are, you know, roughly equivalent.
Yeah.
With stable coins, you're giving your US dollars to somebody, right? They're investing it and they're getting return. You're forced to take investment risk because they're investing your money. Okay.
Right.
And the entity that you're giving the money to is at least currently a jump rated entity. Look at the big ones. Circle. I had a going concern warning from their auditor a year and a half ago. For those who don't understand accounting speak, that means you're probably going to go out of business. They got a big investment. The going concern risk was taken out. They lost more than that by the end of that calendar year.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm not saying Circle is going to go out of business, but they're definitely a risky company. Coinbase, okay, their bonds are now yielding between 14 and 18%. They've lost 45% of their value at par. Very risky. Moody's, that's what the market thinks of their credit. Okay. And the
Right.
market hasn't been digested the patent suit yet. With the patent
Mm.
suit, it's a totally different situation, but the market is very slow because they're looking more at news articles and not actually going to primary sources. And if you do, you know, Coinbase is a significant issue, but let's get past that.
Yeah.
Um, Private credit rating agencies such as Moody's has Coinbase rated at BA1, BA2, and BA3, okay, which is junk and speculative. And it's on review for a downgrade, which means
Mm.
going deeper into speculative, a substantial credit risk is how they define it. So you take US dollars, which is the safest, most liquid asset in the world, okay? allegedly, you're giving it to an entity that has a substantial credit risk. So now you have a counterparty risk that's substantial, and they're taking it and they're going to invest it again. And you're going to take investment risk. Some of that investment risk is significant. For Tether, they did a commercial paper loan to, or they did a short-term loan to Bitfinex, who got hacked and was struggling to hold on to their life. That is very, very high risk. Very much more risk than a dollar or a treasury bill. Okay.
Yeah.
Give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and they're just doing dollars and treasury bills. There's still investment risk because they're not investing in themselves, they're giving it to another entity. Every entity that your dollar touches, you have to add that to your counterparty risk profile. Okay, every single one. Everybody who touches something needs a fingerprint, there's a little bacteria on it. Now, what do you get in return for all this compounded risk for your Tether or your USDC or your BUSD?
1.8%.
No, you're not even getting that. You're getting zero.
That's why I said it like that. Like, that's what they advertise.
Yeah. No, it's not even advertised. When you buy Tether, they don't advertise return. You get nothing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
When you
Tether,
buy USDC, you get nothing. So that's why you're taking the risk, and it's a lot of it, compounded and layered, and you get zero return. It is literally return-free risk. Now, for people who went to business school, like, I heard that before. No, what you heard was risk-free return. That's a treasury bill, which is supposed to be a risk-free return. That's also garbage. There's no such thing as risk-free return. If you get a return, you took a risk. Okay.
Right. That's just by principle.
The US could default easily. They just print more money. It's not a technical default, but you're not getting back what you paid. Okay. Right. But, the US could do it because they're the reserve currency. They're the holders of reserve currency, but not to go off on an economic rant. So now you can take your Tether or USDC, you could do things with it. But if you lend USDC or Tether to somebody, okay, and they invest it and they make a return, now you could get a return on it, but now you're taking even more risk, because that would be called hypothecation. Because you gave someone $100 million, you got $100 million of, you pick your stablecoin of choice. It doesn't matter what the brand name is. Tether, USD, BUSD, etc. Okay, $100 million of Tether with $400 million of actual dollars. Tether goes and invests it. Okay, now you take your Tether coins, you give it to somebody to invest. They lend it out to other exchanges, FTX, KuCoin, whatever. And then they say, we'll give you up to 1.5% on it. Okay, that's good. But how are you going to lend it twice with only one set of collateral? The only collateral you have was the initial $100 million. Right. And then they gave you $100 million of Tether. So that's one collateral deposit and one liability. Okay. So the liability is if you go to redeem your Tether, they have to give you the $100 million back. Okay. So one asset, one liability. Cool. You now take the Tether and you loan it out to other exchanges, to, hedge funds or whatever. They do what they want to it. But now you have one liability, one collateral, right? One collateral and two liabilities. You only put $100 million in. You didn't put $200 million in. But, you have $200 million of liabilities. Because suppose the initial entity that purchased the Tether decides to redeem it. After that Tether was lent out to, Gemini. They redeem it. They get the $100 million back. What's backing the Gemini loan?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to do the math. I was like, wait a minute. The original lump sum has been removed from the equation. So that kind of destroys the rest of the equation.
Right. So basically, $200 minus $100 equals
100.
Because you ain't getting your money back.
Right.
That's what it equals. But that's not an issue until you need your money back.
Yeah.
Okay, so nobody needs their money back. It's no problem. I accuse Coinbase of rehypothecating because they did a deal with they're significant holders of governance tokens for MakerDAO, the algorithmic coin. Okay, decentralized, well, partially decentralized. I'm not going to get into that right now unless you want to, and we're going to wind this down in a minute. But
Yeah.
The okay, and they convinced MakerDAO because they're a significant voter, and the venture capitalists who invested in Coinbase are also significant voters in MakerDAO. So
Hmm.
lo and behold, they convinced MakerDAO to take $1.6 billion of USDC and move it to a Coinbase, and Coinbase would give up to 1.5% of what they call rewards to MakerDAO, which is a yield. My
Yeah.
assumption is, again, risk is the price of reward. The only way to get that yield is to go and invest it and take risk with it. I said that's rehypothecation, using that same model that I just explained to you.
Yeah.
I was wrong, and so after reading the S1, I realized that I made a mistake. They didn't relend the USDC. Coinbase is a reseller of USDC with Circle, so they're a Circle partner.
Hmm.
Okay, and what they did was when they got this USDC, they put it on their platform, and then they're splitting the investment proceeds from the original $1.6 billion. They're splitting a small portion of that with the holders of the USDC, the original owners.
So the rewards that we get, if when we hold USDC on the Coinbase card,
Mm-hmm.
they're essentially coming from that 1.6 billion.
Right, the initial 1.6 million. Well, I thought they were taking the 1.6 billion and then relending it, which is a
Oh,
valid,
okay.
In my defense, was a valid assumption,
I mean,
but it was
it's not
still
like
wrong.
it hasn't been done before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but and I did something I don't see it happen much. I admitted I was wrong, and I apologized directly to the CEO, Brian Armstrong. And so sorry about that, dude.
Yeah.
Now, but I was wrong in a rehypothecation. I'm still not wrong in the return-free risk because let's walk through this again. Coinbase has a junk bond rating through Moody's that is being cut deeper in the junk. Their bonds are down 45%, yielding between 18 and 19%, depending on which maturity. Their bond yields have inverted. So their shorter term bonds are yielding more than their longer term bonds. And
Hmm.
that's the opposite of what's supposed to be. And that happens when the market's perceiving extreme risk on the front end. Okay. Their shares are down roughly 88, 89% from the IPO. If you bought an IPO near it, you lost almost all your money.
I did.
And
I did.
okay, and they now have a patent infringement suit where the plaintiff believes that almost the entire business is covered by the patent. And if you
Right.
look at the suit and look at the motion to dismiss and look at the opposition to the motion, you see a very strong argument, and they don't come close to it addressing it. Again, my opinion, okay, personally, I'm not smart as all these other guys, okay? So look at all that risk in Coinbase, and you're taking your $1.6 billion of USDC, which you bought the stablecoin because you want stability, you want
Hmm.
safety, and you're giving it to basically a pure junk risk that has patent infringement liabilities up the wazoo, you know, junk ratings, and has lost the vast majority of the equity shareholder base with a negative outlook.
Mm.
Okay, so if you had to put your money in a bank, would you use a bank that's junk rated with a bad business model, getting sued for their entire business model?
Absolutely not.
Well, somebody better tell that to MakerDAO.
And that's crazy because the story of they just had someone pass away not too long ago. And
Right,
the story around that is because something occurred along this year with the organization that changed the direction.
right,
And because of that, he wanted to separate himself from what was going on.
right.
Same thing has happened with Dogecoin this year and a
Mm-hmm.
couple of other projects. So it's interesting how these things play out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for people who may be new to this entire thing, new to you, you want to let them know where they can find you at, and I'll also put some links down in the description to some documentation that people can read as well. So
The best way to follow me right now is Twitter at Reggie Middleton. The Boom Bust blog, which has been in existence since 2007, has been attacked. I wonder why.
that's why I was so
So
shocked. I was like, what?
we're still working on, still working on it. So it'll be back up. And
Yeah.
you can also go to the Veritasium community. That's Veritasium_official on Telegram. Bad actors are cloning that group and having their own version of it with a slight misspelling. So be careful. Veritasium_official, not two L's. Just make sure you spell it right. It should
Okay.
be about 3,600 members. You can interface directly with the community there. And at Reggie Middleton is my personal Twitter account. At Veritasium Inc. is Veritasium's corporate account. And at DAO_Veri is the Veridao's account. It's um, the DAO that consists of Veri holders, the so-called defrauded, as alleged. The supporters or my so-called defrauded. And it's a very entrepreneurial, very interesting group. They're doing big things, such
Oh yeah.
as they put a Amicus Curie brief out in support of Ripple against the SEC. And I think it was the strongest out of the 16 because they didn't argue a law or hypotheses. And the others who did a good job. I'm not downplaying them, but they actually gave historical fact of what happens when the SEC gets their way through draconian methods. And
Yeah.
it's not a pleasant read, but it's an interesting read, you know.
Yeah, that's very true. That's something that I said too. Like, I believe that it should be the brief to end the case, but you know, we'll see how things go. But yeah, I'm gonna let you go. Let you get to it. Really enjoyed having you on again. And of course, as things develop, hey, you got a home over here on DHN Crypto. I did rebrand a little bit. And that's for I looked up the history of the word hustle, and it doesn't really have the best attachments to it throughout history.
Right.
So just from a branding perspective, licensing standpoint, figured the change was needed. But that's not important. What's important? Reggie Middleton, patents in crypto, these things matters, guys. So with all that, to all the DHN crypto, I gotta find something else to end the videos with now. But I'll just say this to everyone watching: have a great day, have a prosperous day. Most importantly, and this is still true, if the money is digital, so is the hustle. I'll see y'all in the next video.
Okay. Knowledge is power. Convey
Amen.
knowledge, give them power. Okay.